Morning, this is the House Appropriations Committee. It's Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025. A little after 10 o'clock, we've just come back from the floor where we saw the first group of pages off. I can't believe we're at the end of 6 weeks already, but here we are. And now we are back to continue travels through the FY26 budget, and we're delighted to have the folks from Buildings and General Services with us to go through their budget. And we have a new commissioner, Wanda. And Wanda, why don't you come up, and whoever else you want to bring with you can add more chairs if need be, but.
So for the record, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services.
Okay, great. And then we're going to introduce ourselves.
Okay, and Jason Pinard is our financial lead. He works with the Agency of Administration. I also, if I may, Madam Chair, I have Emily Koziski, who is my Deputy Commissioner, sitting on the sidelines. I have Cole Barney, who works on my legislation and communication. And if you'd like to introduce Harmony.
Yeah, we have Harmony Wilder, who's also one of the financial directors in AOA Financial Services Division.
Great. All right. Well, welcome to all of you. And I think it's your first time coming into our committee this year. So we'll introduce ourselves. We have a bunch of new members to this committee, or returning members to this committee. So Dave, we'll start with you.
Good morning, Dave Affoloni from Morrisville, and I represent Washington. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome. John Kosenska from Burke, and I represent the Essex Caledonia District.
I'm Mike Nigro. I represent Bennington and Powell. Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing the Washington Chittenden District.
Morning, Commissioner. Chip Harrison, Chair of the Invented Village.
And I'm Robin Shy from Middlebury, and Tiff Bloomley from Burlington, who's having a meeting right now.
Trevor Squirrel, Jericho and Underhill.
Randall Rush, Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, and Richford.
Mike Murrick from the Wyndham Ford District of Putney Dumers. Wanda, thank you for all your help you gave to lots of us in your former.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Wanda. Lynn Dickinson, I represent St. Albans Town.
You may see people coming and going at different times. It's because we're meeting with other budget people during the time. So it's not the presentation, it's just that we're trying to get work done, so other work done. So we're glad to have you here in the meantime.
So thank you. It's really an honor to be here presenting the Department of Buildings and General Services budget. I will share with you, for those of you that know me, I'm typically not nervous. I'm nervous today. So I hope to get my budget done in 10 minutes. No, but it's, it was knowing the budget from my previous experience, but, moving over to another agency and overseeing the Department of Motor Vehicles and that budget and the revenue it brought in, it was a shift for me again. So I will appreciate any questions. And if there's information that I don't have, we will definitely try to answer it or get back to Representative LaRoche on behalf of the committee. And are you driving? Well, thank you. I put my budget presentation together just to align with the requirements that you asked for, but visually, I think it's going to be set up a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. So Cole, if you could go to this slide just really quickly. This is our mission, which is Buildings and General Services provides facilities and general services statewide to all agencies and departments. And we really are about providing services for them to be successful. Our vision is to be friendly and responsive to organizations. I'm very focused on customer service. And that's really important to me because if we can deliver the service or improve the service, then we need to do that as an organization. And our values are constant improvements and customer centric that I just talked about. And really communication has to be internally and externally. And one of the reminders coming into this role is really, we also work with many Vermont businesses and some businesses out of state, but through the procurement and contracting portion of the work that we do, and how you support us through the capital bill, we are engaged in employing architects and engineers. And so it's really important for me to just be looking holistically, internally and externally at all the time. The next slide, this is just for you. I'm not going to read through these, but this is really some key operations in our focus areas that we try to manage within the divisions. And now let's get to the budget. So this is the highlight of our budget. We have currently 334 FTEs. We have 31 vacancies. Our vacancies do move through all of the divisions. And we have 12 appropriations that are outlined in this budget that will sort of highlight in a summary way. The biggest areas of change in our budget this year is we're going to see an increase of 4% in the general fund. And the general fund is, the majority of that general fund is for the engineering and architectural staff at BGS. We have an increase in the transportation fund. This is the cost to operate the Vermont Information Centers, which all of you are familiar as you travel our highway. Internal Service Fund, this is the cost of everyone doing business. This increase, I'm sorry, this is our fee for space, correct?
Fee for space, it's property management, it's our government business services, which includes fleet, postal, copy center, federal and state surplus as well.
And then the interdepartmental transfer of funds, that's a 9.4% increase. I think all of you are familiar with this category. These are the services that all of us buy, meaning HR, ADS, financial.
This is within your budget. This is your commission. This is Commissioner's office.
Well, hell, excuse me. I told you I'm nervous.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thank you. And then the special funds, we're seeing a decrease. This is with the brochure
coffee fund, also the information center revenue fund, which is like ad sales.
Yeah. So I'm going to now just highlight the appropriations that we just talked about. So the Commissioner's Office, this is a $1.3 million increase, $3 million or a 3% increase over FY 2025. You're going to see in all of our presentations, our increases are primarily due to steps, COLAs, insurance, retirement, and those service funds. We're not adding any new programs or any new services to drive our budget up. And then the next sheet is our crosswalk. And Madam Chair, do you want me? I'm summarizing on the first sheet what the crosswalk is. I don't
need to know. I mean, this is all standard stuff. What we'd like to know is if you have anything unusual happening. And so, unless anybody is burning questions about these, we skip over the standard stuff.
Perfect. So I can tell the committee there is nothing unusual happening. And so the next team the division that I'd like to just highlight with you, this is design and construction. It's a $4.8 million budget. It's a 2.5% increase over 25. Again, same increases, but we also moved 2 positions within BGS to engineering to meet the program needs. So these were not new positions. These were positions that we moved over from property management, I believe. And we can confirm that. I've identified in the slide for you our performance measures, and being a new commissioner, these were really important for me just to look at and sort of understand. But I presented it a little bit different than you've seen in the past because I'm showing you FY 23, FY 24, and what our targets are for FY 25. In our design and construction division, you see a significant decline from 23 to 24 in our performance measures. And that's really, that is staffing, because we had some vacancies that we haven't been able to fill. But we've also, this team has been focused on Montpelier and the flooding of Montpelier and meeting the demands and needs of filings that we have to with FEMA. And we're starting to get in a really good place with some of those deliverables. So we're going back and trying to increase our targets. And if we can move to the information centers. So I recommend for the information centers is 5.6 million. This program is a mix of general fund, transportation, and special funds. So we just talked about the special funds seeing a pretty large decrease there. The transportation fund, our general fund aligns with the match on the transportation fund. Again, this program, we are seeing an increase to the insurance, retirement steps, COLAs. And I just want to say, if I can, in general to the committee, that if you do go into the detail sheets, you're going to see, while we have an overall increase in BGS's budget, and every division is a little bit differently, to hit our targets, we really used vacancy turnover savings. We did not, there's not a lot of room for us to go in and just start looking at each line item and redlining it, because the cost of doing business is the cost of doing business, especially on the general service side. These performance measures, as you can see, they have not changed. What I find to be really interesting in 23 and 24 is that we are seeing more visitors at our locations. And that's positive, because that's what they're there for. They are on the highway, they promote regional areas and services, and it's showing, and we do counts that there's an increase.
So performance measures are basically numbers and tracking volume.
Yes.
But we don't know the impact of that. Do you ever follow up with, say, the businesses that are advertising in your information centers to find out if they are getting increased revenue as a result of that? Or people saying, oh, I saw you at I was at the rest area on 89 and I came to check out. Do you follow up with any of that stuff?
I think that's a great question. I don't have an answer to it. So I will follow up on that. And, because my logic, if you look at that column that says Vermont businesses promoted,
Yes.
this is a service they're buying.
Yeah.
And that's staying consistent. So my logic would tell me it's working, but we will follow up and I'll see what data I have on that.
That'd be interesting to know. And I know you closed the Montpelier Center due to the floods, and this committee, different makeup of committee, but this committee last year visited 4 of the buildings that were impacted by the 23 floods. And maybe this is later in your presentation, and sort of an update on what's happening within the Capitol complex of, are any of these ever going to open again? Are you going to, because they're in the floodplain, so another flood is going to be the same thing. So I wonder
it's not in my presentation, but I'm happy to give you a quick overview when we get done. And then, and specifically, since we're on information centers, coming in October, and trying to determine, do we open it? And I know that, and I've had some conversations with the city of Montpelier, because they see it as a critical, piece to their downtown business. But the vision and the mission of that building is really to be central Vermont. It's to help support Waterbury, it's Berlin, Northfield. And so I've been working with my team to say, if we find a location, or if we have a building that we can, open up and make available to the public, what does it look like? Because we have an opportunity to say, what does it look like? Can it look differently?
Yes.
Can we serve central Vermont from this location in a different way? And we just honestly have not gotten there.
Yeah, you haven't been in that long. Okay.
So we will go to the next, which is purchasing and contracting. I think all of you are well aware that, this division under general services is responsible for administering, and procuring and contracting, for all state entities, under Bulletin 3.5. The Agency of Transportation has some ability to bid out their own types of projects, but the majority move through this office. I think it's very efficient at $3.1 million for the volume of contracts that they process. This is a mix of general and interdepartmental funds. You see a 10.7% increase in FY 25. It's due to the COLAs, again, in the retirement, but we've had some vacancies in this division, and they're actually staffed. So to try to capture some of the vacancy turnover was a little bit more difficult in this particular program. And what's interesting is that even, and I wasn't surprised to see this, but between 23 and 24, you would have thought maybe because of the flooding, we would have seen a shift. But I think sometimes people think purchasing and contracting are all about the engineer and the construction projects. And there's really a huge lift. AHS is a huge partner. There's many services that this division has to purchase or contract on behalf of the state. Any questions? So the next budget is our postal services. And this is $1.1 million budget. It's a mix again of general and internal service funds, but it is a 2.9% increase over FY 25. The mail is the mail. We have to move our mail. We deliver. Montpelier, Waterbury are our largest areas where we actually pick up and deliver. We manage this program at a lesser cost than going directly to the post office. I think in the performance evaluations, measures, what is really interesting is that we saw a huge decrease in 23 and 24 in the pieces of pink mail process. And so working with the team, we're starting to get very comfortable with electronic signatures, transmitting through PDFs. And I think we're seeing that internal drop there. As far as the mail process, you can see that in 23, we had 4.6 pieces outgoing and 2.8 incoming. In 24, we saw a decrease in the incoming. And it was really hard to try to get a lot of specifics around why the decrease. So I think we just started to align with, again, I think teleworking, no pink mail, people communicating. We're signing contracts online. There's less mail moving back and forth. But I will just share with you that I learned that these measures in 23 and 24 are samplings of how they looked at the mail coming in. So they weren't exact. So in 25, we are combining all of the mail. And because they weren't counting it, they were doing samplings, and that's where those came from. Yes.
You must have where's the central location for the mail? You're distributing it from some location.
The central location is still in Middlesex. We do out of that central location is our print and postal. It's a shared space. It's space that is shared with the Secretary of State, the archives. You may all be familiar with that location.
Yeah, Commissioner, if my memory serves me right, because of the change in whole mail processing over time, that fund has incurred a deficit I may be wrong on that, so I'm curious as to, do we know where that is now?
I can get it for you. Do you know? Yeah, we will, by the end of the meeting, we can get it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was here, maybe also in the printing shop, had issues, and I get it, a lot of things have changed, and as our fixed cost changed with them is easily,
A
so.
lot of the deficits have been driven because of the rate. So in a lot of cases, those programs didn't raise their rate for like 10 years. So, when you have expenses that continuously go up and you're not raising your rates, there's very few businesses that would ever survive that. So we have redirected those rates to align with the expenses. So I think those deficits should start to deteriorate over time, but we'll get you what they are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up on that question. How are the rates set? Do you have to come to legislature, get a rate change or it's a means or?
No, I'm trying to remember on that. Do you remember? I can't. Yeah, so do you know how we set the rates? Is that just done through finance or do we have to come through and get legislative approval? I don't remember. Yeah,
They set the statute so that it's based on the federal postal stamp cost.
But do we need, I don't remember if we need legislative approval or not. And Holly's online too. I don't know if she remembers either. I forget off the top. We can find out.
I do have the fund balance.
Okay.
Currently, at the end of FY 24 was negative $3,085,190.
And this is in the
Which was
posting.
slightly better than the prior year of almost 3.2 million.
That's postal, right?
Yes, that's postal. So gained about $100,000.
Yeah.
But at this rate, 30 years, we'll have it taken care of.
You won't have to worry about it, Jim. That's a good thing.
There you go.
What, you're on.
Join when he was 3.
Jason.
And then we'll confirm the statutory language.
But just to follow up too, those deficits were all driven because of the rate, the lack of increase in the rates,
I
yeah.
appreciate it, but
Yeah.
it's still like we have to.
Absolutely.
Make it clean.
Yep, for sure.
Further questions on the postal services? Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
The next slide is our fleet management services. We're looking at a $1.2 million budget with an 8.7% increase. And when you look at the performance measures, you can see that we saw a decrease in the cost savings between 23 and 24, and we're trying to level that back out in 25. Otherwise, the utilization is staying about the same and the
Are you
motor.
on the print shop or the fleet?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. I went to fleet. I am so sorry because we went from postal. Let's go back to print. I told you I was nervous and I'm never nervous. So the print shop, is $1.1 million increase, or $1.1 million budget, 3% increase. And there is, I thought we would have seen a little bit more of an increase in this area. I just want to say because VCI at one time, was doing some of our printing. So I'm not really sure. We've set our targets for 25, but it will be interesting to see if we do see an increase in that. We used to operate 3 shifts. We are now down to 2 shifts, which is very interesting. That was a big change for me. The team is really dedicated. There is statute that says that or policy that says you'll use the print shop unless we can't do the work. We've just recently made some investment in the equipment because the equipment is really outdated. And it's, just a really dedicated team there. And this is, I'm hoping we do see a little bit of increase just because of VCI, but there's certain types of print that VCI provided that we don't. And our team is really good when we get requests from agencies and departments. And I really, that when it's a job or a request that they really don't have the equipment or maybe some of the skill set to do, that they will reach out to the department and really recommend that they use another service. And that's especially with some brochures, so. Any comments or questions there? Now we're at fleet. Let's start all over. So fleet is a $1.2 million budget. It's an 8.7% increase. And again, all of the increases, are aligning with the same. There are no surprises. And this is the one that I was talking, I identified in the performance measures between 23 and 24. You obviously see the use go down. And we are trying to bring the use back up or realign what is the new measure going to be. We are not modifying the rates at this time. And, we always with this program, this is a great program. I'm just going to do a shout out. Harmony actually worked at BGS and really set the standards around this program when it was rolled out. So there's wonderful data and measures within it to help us make business decisions. And it's one of the areas that we'll be looking at in the next year, just as teleworking, just as utilization of spaces. Are we at the right place? Do we need less vehicles? Do we need to maintain what we have?
So how many vehicles do you have and how many are electric or hybrid?
So of course, that's what I didn't bring. I feel like I have 600 vehicles, about 600 vehicles. I know that number within the fleet. And then I know we have multiple hybrids. But the number of electric vehicles I do not have with me.
I may have to, I will.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. So we can summarize at the end. Any other questions on fleet management? So we will move to the world of surplus property. And so this program manages the state surplus and takes in federal surplus. I will, I remember when we really did a big shift in this program to make services available to municipalities, to be able to purchase equipment and other items. I think back in the early 2000s, they could not utilize this program. And that was just a memory. And I think that that is one of probably the best successes. With this, the budget's $545,000, 2.9% increase. One of the other things that I've learned, like when we have some inventory, and I'm just going to use an example of a vehicle that we know that we're not going to probably get a whole lot at resale or an auction, through agreement and waivers, we can donate that property to municipalities or other programs. And since I've been commissioner, I believe there's been 2 vehicles specifically that we were able to transfer to one of the programs that are creating rides for individuals that can't afford to purchase their cars.
Like cars for kids.
Cars for kids. What is that?
There's a total of 638 vehicles in the fleet. And 304 of them are electric, but it's a combination of all electric, what we call battery electric, plug-in hybrid electric, and then just standard hybrid electric, which are not plug-in. So I don't have the breakdown of the electrics, but problems of electric. So
That's good. Just Go ahead, Jim.
So that number, the 600 plus vehicles, suspecting, certain segments are like assigned to almost permanently to, you're doing the leasing for various departments. Like, I don't know, for example, if state police cruisers are in that mix, or whether vehicles that fish and game wardens might have, or you know, where does AOT and their trucks fit into it?
So under statute, they actually have authority to manage their own fleet programs. So this is, our fleet program is actually for passenger vehicles, some trucks, but the vehicles like with AOT that you're referring to, that is managed by them. The state police, we help with the contracting and working through that, but they do the assignment and manage their own fleet vehicles. And I'm assuming that's the same for all law enforcement, fish and wildlife. And then DMV law enforcement goes through AOT. So we are not,
Controls enforcement.
yeah. So it's really the enforcement and the transportation vehicles that are managed separately.
But out of that 600 plus vehicles, I mean, how many would be pool vehicles, like available for, you know, if I was attending a meeting on the other end of the state, versus how many are permanently assigned? Let's just say I'm a weights and measure for the Agency of Agriculture and I work out of my home. My assumption is they might be assigned a vehicle for their work. Is that?
Yeah, that's a correct assumption, and I feel so unprepared. I did not bring that data, but I do have a summary sheet of that I will get to that gives you the breakdown where of our inventory, some are assigned and there's a percentage. And I know Harmony's over there on her computer looking at it right now, to be absolutely honest with you. So of our inventory, do you have?
I don't have the exact number, but it's about 70 or less that are pooled.
That are cool, and the rest are assigned
That's
to,
correct. I'm trying to find the exact number, it may have been less than close some of the low.
And it's not necessarily their position, it is the position and how many miles they travel and what the job actually does. And we have in place a calculation to determine, should we be working with the department on giving them full-time fleet vehicles because of miles that they travel versus just using it to going to the pool and going to a meeting. So it is formulated. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about, I think the next slide we can go to is property management. So this division, it really manages all of our state-owned leases. It manages all requests from agencies and departments that if they have a new program and they need additional space, or they need to have less space, or maybe they're opening up an office in an area that they haven't had one. So they're managing that. They also manage all of the leases that we currently operate and the conditions and terms of those leases. The budget is 1.8 million. This is a decrease from 25. I think there's some vacancy turnovers. These are the
Positions, we've had 3 positions move out of this program into other BGS positions.
Yeah, then that's the biggest.
Yep.
That's the biggest change
Yep.
there. In the performance measures, there's no significant changes between the lease space cost versus the total space or the number of leases that were entered into. We've seen a small decline in the lease space that we are actually renting. Questions? If not, we can move to fee for space. I think all of you have heard about this program and you probably talked to everyone else about their fee for space charge within their budget. Fee for space is how the Department of Buildings and General Services operates in maintaining the building, and we pay for our staff. Operation and maintenance is our largest division. I think I'm currently at about 217 employees in this division. These are our maintenance, our custodians, our HVAC experts, our electricians, and we are regionally set up throughout the state, which we maintain all of the buildings within our inventory. So this year's budget is 39.4 million. It's a 3% increase over 25. And it's a mix of interdepartmental transfer funds and internal service. And again, it is insurance, retirement, and the increases. There's nothing significant that made this budget change. It's really about doing our operations and maintenance daily with the current staffing that we have.
Yes.
Everybody always asks, so could you just explain how you set the fee for space? How the
rates.
rates are set?
Yeah, we do it by district to try to manage those costs so that, years ago, we used to do it by town. And so if you had something large happen in a specific building within a town, those rates would change drastically. So we've tried to massage that a little bit differently and do it by a district-wide rate. So that's how we set the rates. And it's all based off of the amount of costs within that district and the amount of square footage that are being maintained within that district. Yeah.
And we calculated on we still do it looking at actuals from 2 years ago. So when we set the rate this year, it's based on the actual.
Yeah, I mean, we develop a base based off the actuals, and then we apply it to whatever the budget's going to be for that particular year. So, yeah.
So if I could go back, can you share the difference between the property management expenses versus the fee for space? I know the fee for space is like the vast majority of state buildings, including this one.
The main, and this is the simplest way to say it. So the property management program is all leased space. So it's space that we rent from XYZ Corporation, and then we lease it out to Department of Health or the Department of Transportation. Fee for space is all state-owned space. So we own the buildings and we rent it out to the Department of Health. So it's just a simple difference between the two. It's lease versus owned space. Yep.
That's helpful. Yep. Where does space like that may not be utilized, like I'm thinking of Cherry Street in Burlington, where do the expenses of maintaining that property show up?
So that's a unique one because we're in the process of trying to sell that building. You're talking 108 Cherry Street, Van Perry building? Yeah, so that's a unique one. There was 3 buildings that were purchased years ago prior to all of us. And that was 108 Cherry Street. It was Asa Bloomer building down in Rutland. And then it was the Hutton Street in St. Albans, which has been sold. But those 3 buildings were purchased within the property management program, even though they're state-owned buildings, whereas every other state-owned building is within the fee for space program. So we treat those very similar to the fee for space program in that we bill it out based off the actual cost that it takes to operate those facilities. 108 Cherry's in a weird spot because we do have some stranded costs there that aren't being billed out they are being billed out, but there's not any tenants there. So we're not really sure how we're going to handle those costs going forward. But the reason for why property management is down is because we've moved 3 employees out of that program because there were employees that were servicing that facility that no longer are there. So we don't have those costs, but there are a slight amount of stranded costs that we're going to have to.
They end the fee for space.
We're in the property management program. Yeah. Because those three buildings, like I said, when they were purchased, were put into the property management program, and it was due to bonding issues that predates me, so I don't know, the exact reasoning, but
We do have a purchase and sale for 108 Cherry, but I believe it has an extension until, I think they have until, and I can correct, I think June. And I'm looking at Emily, she may not even know this, but June of next year.
26.
So, yeah.
Representative.
Yeah, the state goes through cycles. They own, when they decide they don't want to own, when they lease. When they decide they don't want to lease, they can buy back, they own. Can you go through that cycle a little bit?
I don't think we cycle as much as people think. I think it's the cost when we do cycle that is.
It's cheaper to lease or it's cheaper than to.
Well, it's actually more, it's still showing that it is, still more effective to own. But it's really, what is the program? Where are we looking at putting the program and services? And are we going into an existing building or are we building a new building? And when we look at that in its totality, there may be a vacant building that it is more cost effective to lease. So I think that's why it's the evaluation of what we're doing that makes it, look at it. But currently, and I don't have my space book, we're still maintaining over 2 million of our own square feet in building. And I think we're leasing about 800,000 roughly square feet of space.
And BGS has worked hard over the last 2 years to reduce their lease space imprint.
Yes.
So that we are taking advantage of all of the own space that we possibly can and not leasing space, when we have space within our building. So they have really reduced that footprint and worked hard to reduce that over the last few years. So.
And one of the things that I'm doing, and it's sort of jumping into Montpelier, and I'm starting there is, we really need to, we've done this before and I don't need legislation because it's just good business. We're actually looking at utilization. We do have data on our buildings that we own, what the occupants are, and trying to really realign and I need to have a better understanding of what is the future within our property. Do we have opportunities on utilization and teleworking and really realigning that? And when we're dealing with one-off requests, we're looking at that. And, a great example is BTS moved out of 214 Governor Aiken Avenue, and they moved to the 5th floor of 133. They're in considerably less square footage than what they were because they realigned on the teleworking plan and what to do. So that's going on. I want to be a little bit more focused in the next year on it. So I hope I'm successful.
One last follow-up on that. In some cases, certainly up in my area, when you own, there's a pilot payment to the community versus when it's owned by somebody else and you lease it, that's added to the grand list. And there are communities that sometimes prefer that. So.
Right. Yes, in pilot in lieu of taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the town would rather get, or the community would rather get the grand list and ask you to pay rent.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure you have to take that into consideration somewhere.
yeah.
But we're, with exception, I think all of you are well aware of this. We have some, and I think that of our inventory, and I didn't bring this with me, but about 50% of our inventory is operated 24/7. And when I say inventory, it's by square footage. Especially with our partnership with the Agency of Human Services and Corrections. And they have some large needs coming forward and we're trying to look at those, fiscally, but we've been talking about replacement correctional facilities and, the Green Mountain Camp, for the use. And those are big projects. And that type of use, we can't reuse some of our state facilities because they were built for offices.
Right.
Thank you. Yep. Any other questions? So if we've talked about operation and maintenance, and again, I will just close with the governor's recommend and our ask for the BGS budget is $60.3 million. An overall increase of 1.4 plus 1.5 million.
I do have a question, and I'm sorry, I had to
That's
out for a
okay.
minute, so I don't know if you already covered this, but I'm just wondering, what are your biggest challenges right now?
As a leader and as a new leader that started on October 14th, I think the challenges that I get from the staff is transitioning, the flood impacted them. And it impacted delivery of, especially in our design and construction. And it's impacted Montpelier, specifically, and a little bit in Waterbury. So getting us back to wrapping up, how are we going to, Montpelier is going to be a project probably anywhere from 2 to 5 years, right? And so that takes a lot of focus, working with Doug Farnham on the deliverables with FEMA and the expectations, the amount of work that we have to put into that with a contractor and the analysis is significant. And so we have to take some of our best, strongest employees who can, that have experience to work on that, which means we have to shift projects, and we're trying to align and prioritize and balance. So for me, that's, I think, looking at that, and then the utilization of space and what does the future work look like. I really want to be cognizant of that, and I really want that to be a part of good planning. And I'm not saying this just in general. They're really phenomenal people, and they work really, really hard. And their dedication, is so apparent and strong. And so coming in, that was just wonderful to be able to receive that. And they don't say no very often. They should. And no one needs to tell them, come and watch us. But, so I think for, every day is a busy day. Every day in that department is a very, very busy day. And it's, and it's probably those are the areas in operation and maintenance and design and engineering. I think that we have the biggest shift or the constant change. Our, print, postal, the information centers, they're managed by really good people and they run well.
So in Montpelier, is it your thinking that you would try to rebuild in where the buildings are now, or relocate, or is it too early to know the answer to?
It's not an answer to, so we have to go through a process and determine what are we applying for, right? And so, and I'm not good with the terminology yet, but 428 is our flood mitigation. We have to come up with a flood mitigation plan that aligns with FEMA in order to maximize the dollars that we are going to get. So what that means is every building, every piece of property that had damage to, there's levels and levels of reports that go on. And so an example is once we have all of our options laid out, and this hasn't happened yet, but this is a great example that we look at the auditor's building, which you're familiar with. So our option and our analysis is going to be, we fill the basement and put the systems up on the top floor. Do we raise the building and put the systems back in the basement because we want the occupancy that exists there. Can we, and we have to maintain the historic property. So it's a balance of that, but it's also everything with the parking lots, everything that's behind and flood mitigation and really determining what is the best for future floods. And we have to bring this into the analysis. And so I can't say, this building is going to go, this one's going to be used this way, because right now it's really about what's acceptable and what are our options.
It's a lot of work, so appreciate that.
Yes.
Quite eye-opening to take that tour last year.
So you toured the?
We did, this committee, after the budget is out, we have a few weeks
Okay,
before the Senate finishes up and we try to do something, we do field trips. So that's what we did last year. Great.
and so we got you the electric vehicle. I think we are gonna do a little bit of, we've got to get back just on a couple of things to Representative LaRoche. And, if you have any other questions, please reach out to us.
Great. And the motor rate.
See, we have the motor pool rate as
The
well.
number of motor pool vehicles in the state is 48, and 590 vehicles are assigned to
Well, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your time and appreciate all your hard work. And we will, Rep. Baruch is the liaison, as you already know. So if we have questions, we will funnel them through him. So thank you.
Right.
Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful weekend.
You too. So committee, why don't we take 5 minutes and we have the Secretary of State's office here at 11. So let's go